There was a version of you that had no problem believing you could own a rocket ship. Not metaphorically, not as a vision board exercise. You actually believed it. You said it out loud to adults who smiled and nodded and secretly thought, "That'll fade." And it did. But here's the thing nobody ever stopped to ask: what actually killed it? Not why it faded. What specifically removed it? Because the answer isn't what you think. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You still don't know what it is yet. Keep reading. Every trillionaire alive right now shares one cognitive trait that most researchers won't call by its real name. They dress it up. They call it long-term thinking, or high-risk tolerance, or visionary leadership. But those are just the adult words for something you did naturally at age 6 without any training, any book, any mentor. You did it while eating cereal. You did it while sitting in the back seat of a car watching trees blur past the window. The question is, when did you stop? That's loop 1. Hold it. Here's what's strange. The children who grow up to build billion-dollar companies don't score higher on IQ tests. They don't come from richer families on average. They don't read faster or sleep less or work harder in school. Several of the most documented cases, the ones researchers actually tracked from childhood into adulthood, were considered problems by their teachers: distracted, difficult, resistant to instruction. What they shared wasn't intelligence. It wasn't discipline. It was something that looked from the outside like a defect. You had it too, you still don't know what it is. That's intentional. Think about the last time you wanted something and immediately heard a voice that told you why it wasn't possible. Not someone else's voice. Yours. You were the one who filed the objection. You were the one who listed the reasons. You were thorough about it, responsible even. You protected yourself from disappointment with a very efficient internal system that you built sometime between age 8 and age 14, and have been running on autopilot ever since. That system has a name, and the name is not realism. That's loop 2. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. There's a study, not widely cited because the conclusion makes people defensive, where researchers asked children aged 5 through 7 to describe what they wanted to be. Then asked them again at 12, then again at 17. The language changed in a very specific way. At 5, I want to be an astronaut. At 12, I think I might want to study science maybe. At 17, I'm looking at what's realistic given my grades. The content barely changed. The permission structure collapsed entirely. The 5-year-old wasn't delusional. The 17-year-old wasn't wise. Something happened in the middle, and it wasn't puberty. It wasn't poverty. It was something that almost every child in every income bracket experienced at roughly the same developmental window. You're getting closer to what it is. But first, there's something worse to look at. The trillionaire mindset isn't about money. That's the first misdirection everyone falls for. You read the word trillionaire and your brain immediately went to net worth, to Elon Musk, to someone who is simply not you. That framing is the trap. Because the actual cognitive system being described has nothing to do with dollars. It existed in you before you knew what a dollar was. It was operating when you were 5 and decided you were going to build a city in the backyard with a moat and a drawbridge, and you started moving dirt before lunch. That's not ambition. That's something older than ambition. That's loop 3. There are 3 specific mechanisms that dismantle this system in childhood. Not 1, 3. And they work in sequence, which is why most people can't identify the exact moment it happened. It didn't happen in a moment. It happened in 3 stages across several years, each one laying the groundwork for the next, each one feeling completely reasonable from the outside. The first mechanism is the most obvious, so obvious that people dismiss it. Correction, not punishment, not trauma, just ordinary, well-meaning correction. That's not how things work. That's not realistic. You'll understand when you're older. Repeated often enough, correction doesn't just change behavior. It changes the internal question the child asks before doing anything. It switches the question from "what do I want" to "is this allowed?" That switch sounds small. It isn't. The second mechanism is subtler and more damaging. Comparison, not the cruel kind. The encouraging kind. "Look how well she did on her test. Look what he built. You could do that too if you tried." The message sounds motivating. What the child's brain actually receives is different. It receives, "Your value is relative. You are being measured against others. The goal is not to pursue what interests you, the goal is to not fall behind." The moment a child starts benchmarking themselves against peers, the internal compass breaks. Because now the question isn't "what do I want to build?" It's "what will make me look capable compared to the person next to me?" That is not the trillionaire mindset. That is the opposite of it. You felt that shift, you just didn't have language for it. The third mechanism is the one nobody talks about: praise, specifically the kind of praise tied to outcomes. You finished it. You won. You got an A, I'm proud of you. What the child learns is that the reward comes at the end. The completion is the point. The approval is waiting at the finish line. So the child's brain begins to filter ideas through a new lens. Can this be finished? Can this be won? Will this produce the thing that gets me the response I need? And the rocket ship idea doesn't survive that filter, because it can't be finished by Thursday. There's no grade for it. No one is handing out approval for drawing diagrams of a spacecraft in the margin of your math homework. So the idea gets quietly retired, filed under someday. And someday is where ideas go to stop existing. Now you know what killed it, but that's not the end of the loop. Because here's the part that should bother you. You are still running all three mechanisms, right now, today. The correction reflex that fires before you commit to anything large. The comparison engine that scans the room before you decide how ambitious to sound. The outcome filter that kills the idea if there's no clear finish line in view. You didn't outgrow these. You promoted them. You gave them senior roles in your decision-making and called it maturity. So what does getting it back actually look like? Not vision boards, not affirmations. Not a morning routine someone sold you in a course. Those are all outcome framed. They all require a finish line, which means they're running on the same broken system. Getting it back looks like something much simpler and much harder. It looks like letting an idea exist without immediately asking whether it's realistic, not believing it blindly, not committing to it recklessly, just letting it breathe for long enough to find out what it's made of. The way a 5-year-old with a shovel doesn't stop to calculate the structural requirements of a moat before moving the first handful of dirt. The trillionaire mindset isn't the belief that you'll succeed. It's the absence of the reflex to preemptively fail yourself. You had that once. You were never told you lost it. You were just slowly, carefully, reasonably taught to replace it with something safer. And here's what nobody tells you about getting it back. You won't feel like yourself at first. You'll feel reckless, irresponsible, like you're regressing, like the adults in the room can see that you've stopped being serious. That feeling isn't a warning signal. That feeling is the thing you've been trying to get back. You just forgot what it felt like to carry it.